The coffee shop on Fifth Avenue had seen thousands of first dates, but none quite like this one. Victoria Hayes smoothed down her navy dress for the third time, her fingers trembling slightly as she checked her phone. 7:45. He was late. Or maybe he wasn't coming at all. She wouldn't blame him. A successful businessman agreeing to meet someone like her, a 32-year-old single mother working double shifts at a downtown diner, seemed too good to be true from the start. Her sister Rachel had set this up, insisting it was time for Victoria to get back out there. After 3 years of focusing solely on her 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, Rachel worked at some fancy corporate office and claimed she knew this man through business connections. "He's perfect for you, Vic," she'd said with that mysterious smile. "Just trust me on this one." Victoria glanced around the upscale cafe, feeling conspicuously out of place among the designer handbags and expensive watches. She'd splurged on this dress, money she really couldn't afford to spend, because Rachel had made such a big deal about making a good impression. Now, sitting alone at a corner table while well-dressed couples whispered and laughed around her, she felt like a fool. The door chimed, and a man walked in. Victoria's breath caught. He was tall, with dark hair slightly graying at the temples, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His presence commanded attention without trying. Several heads turned as he surveyed the room, his blue eyes scanning faces until they landed on her. Their eyes met, and something shifted in his expression. Confusion? Recognition? He approached slowly, and Victoria noticed the expensive watch, the polished shoes, the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. "Victoria?" His voice was deep, measured. She nodded, standing up too quickly and nearly knocking over her water glass. "Yes. You must be... Christopher?" "Christopher Dalton." He extended his hand, and she shook it, noting the firm but gentle grip. "I apologize for being late. Traffic was worse than expected." They sat down, and an awkward silence stretched between them. Victoria studied his face, trying to read his expression. He looked uncomfortable, confused. She couldn't quite place it. "So," Christopher began, his tone careful. "Rachel set this up?" "Yes, my sister. She said you two knew each other through work." Victoria watched his face closely. A muscle in his jaw tightened. Did she? It wasn't a question. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then set it face down on the table. "Tell me about yourself, Victoria." The request seemed genuine, despite the strange tension she sensed. Victoria took a breath. "I'm a single mom. I have a daughter, Sophie. She's 7. I work at Riverside Diner. Have been for 4 years now. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills." She paused, feeling suddenly defensive. Rachel probably didn't mention that part. Christopher's expression softened slightly. "She mentioned you had a daughter. She didn't mention where you worked, but I don't see why that would matter." "Because you're..." Victoria gestured vaguely at his suit, his watch, the aura of wealth that surrounded him like cologne. "You're clearly successful, and I'm... not." A waiter appeared, breaking the tension. They ordered, coffee for both, and after he left, Christopher leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. "Success is relative," he said quietly. "You're raising a child on your own while holding down a job. That sounds pretty successful to me." Victoria felt her cheeks warm. "That's kind of you to say. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something internally. "Victoria, can I ask you something? This date, did Rachel explain how she arranged it? What exactly did she tell you about me?" The question struck Victoria as odd. "She said you were a businessman, that you were looking to meet someone genuine, someone real. She said you were tired of dating women who only cared about your money." Victoria bit her lip. "She made it sound like you specifically asked to meet someone like me, someone normal." Christopher's jaw tightened again, and he picked up his phone, glanced at the screen, then set it down harder than necessary. "I see. Is something wrong?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table. Victoria's stomach knotted. This was it. He was going to make an excuse and leave. She'd been stupid to think this could work, to think someone like him would be interested in someone like her. "Victoria," he finally said, his voice low. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you react." Her heart sank. "Okay. I didn't ask to meet someone like you. I didn't ask to meet anyone." He ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time, he looked uncertain. 3 days ago, my assistant, Rachel, your sister, came to my office with a proposition. She said she wanted to set me up on a blind date. I said no. I've said no to every setup attempt for the past 2 years. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. "Then why are you here?" Because she persisted. She told me it was for a good cause, that it would be one evening of my time, and that I should give it a chance. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. What she didn't tell me was that she was setting me up with her own sister, or that this was apparently some kind of social experiment or joke. The words hit Victoria like cold water. A joke? Christopher's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. He turned the screen toward her. Victoria saw a group text message, a thread that included Rachel's name and several others she didn't recognize. The most recent message, sent just moments ago, read, "How's the charity case going, boss? Is she as desperate as Rachel promised?" Victoria's vision blurred. The coffee shop seemed to tilt around her. She grabbed the edge of the table, her breath coming in short gasps. "I just saw this," Christopher said quickly. "Victoria, I had no idea." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Nearby conversations paused. "Were you in on it?" Her voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. "This whole thing, were you in on it?" Christopher stood too, his face a mixture of anger and something that looked like genuine distress. "No, I swear to you I had no idea what Rachel was planning. If I had known, my sister..." Victoria's voice broke. "My own sister set me up as a joke. She convinced me to spend money I don't have on this dress. She told me to get my hopes up. The humiliation crashed over her in waves. Around them, people were staring now, but she couldn't bring herself to care. "Victoria, please sit down. Let you what? Explain how I'm the punchline? How my life is so pathetic that your employees think it's funny?" Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him, in front of all these people. She grabbed her purse, needing to escape, to get away from the pitying looks and the whispers and the crushing weight of her own stupidity. But as she turned to leave, Christopher's hand caught her wrist, gentle, not restraining. "Wait," he said, and something in his voice made her pause. "Please. 5 more minutes. If after that you want to leave, I won't stop you. But there's something you need to know." Victoria looked at his hand on her wrist, then up at his face. The anger there wasn't directed at her. She could see that now. It was directed at the people who'd done this to both of them. "What could you possibly say that would make this better?" she asked, her voice hollow. Christopher released her wrist but held her gaze. "That I'm going to make sure everyone involved in this regrets it, and that if you'll let me, I'd like to turn their cruel joke into their worst nightmare." Victoria sank back into her chair. Not because she believed him, but because her legs felt too weak to carry her out of the coffee shop. Christopher sat down across from her, his expression hardening as he scrolled through more messages on his phone. "These people," he said, his voice tight with controlled fury, "work in my company's marketing department. Rachel is my executive assistance coordinator. I recognize these names." He looked up at her. "By tomorrow morning, they'll be looking for new jobs." "Don't," Victoria said quietly. Christopher's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me? Don't fire them because of me. That'll just make me the woman who cost people their livelihoods. They'll resent me even more, and honestly..." She laughed bitterly. "I don't need more reasons for people to think I'm pathetic. You're not pathetic." Christopher's tone was firm. "You're a woman who trusted her sister. There's nothing pathetic about that." Victoria wiped at her eyes, careful not to smudge her mascara. "My sister. I can't believe Rachel would do this. We've had our differences, but this..." She shook her head. "Why? What did I ever do to make her hate me this much?" Christopher was quiet for a moment, still reading through the message thread. "From what I'm seeing here, it wasn't hate. It was ego." He turned the phone toward her again. "Look at this message from 2 weeks ago." Victoria read Rachel's words. My sister thinks she's so noble, working her little diner job, raising her kid alone, always turning down my help, always so proud. Maybe if she sees what real success looks like, she'll finally admit she needs me. The betrayal cut deeper than Victoria expected. She wanted to humiliate me into accepting her charity. It appears so. Christopher pocketed his phone. Your sister has always struck me as ambitious. Too ambitious, perhaps. She's been angling for a promotion, trying to prove she's indispensable. This was probably her way of entertaining the team, showing she could manipulate even her own family for a laugh. Victoria felt sick. How long have you known her? She's been with the company for 8 months. Efficient worker, but... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I've noticed she has a tendency to view people as transactions, useful or not useful. I should have paid more attention to that red flag. You couldn't have known she'd do something like this. Neither could you. Christopher signaled the waiter. Do you want something stronger than coffee? I think we both could use it. Victoria almost declined. She needed to get home to Sophie, needed to process this nightmare. But something made her stay. Maybe it was the way Christopher looked genuinely angry on her behalf. Maybe it was because leaving meant going home to the apartment she shared with a daughter who would ask about the date, and Victoria couldn't face those innocent questions yet. Wine, she said. Red, please, they ordered, and as the waiter left, Christopher leaned forward. Tell me about Sophie. The question surprised her. Why? Because you're her mother, and from what I can see, that's the most important part of who you are. I'd like to know about her. Something in Victoria's chest loosened slightly. She's 7, 2nd grade. She loves dinosaurs and wants to be a paleontologist, though last month she wanted to be an astronaut, and before that, a veterinarian. A real smile touched her lips. She's brilliant and exhausting and the best thing that ever happened to me. Her father. Victoria's smile faded, left when I told him I was pregnant, said he wasn't ready to be a dad. I haven't heard from him since, and honestly, that's fine. Sophie and I are better off without someone who didn't want to be there. Christopher nodded slowly. My father left when I was 9. Different circumstances. But I understand what it's like to grow up without one parent. Is that why you built your empire? Trying to prove something? The question came out before Victoria could stop it, and she immediately regretted it. I'm sorry. That was too personal. No, it's fair. Christopher accepted his scotch from the waiter, while Victoria received her wine. Partly, yes, I wanted to prove I could succeed without him. But mostly, I wanted to make sure I'd never be dependent on anyone else's choices. Control my own destiny, so to speak. And how's that working out? Victoria asked, then gestured around them, given that we're both sitting here because of other people's manipulations. Christopher's laugh was unexpected, deep, and genuine. Touché. Clearly my control isn't as absolute as I thought. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easier than Victoria expected. Christopher told her about building his real estate development company from the ground up, the mistakes he'd made, the lessons learned. Victoria shared stories about Sophie, about the regulars at the diner, about the life she'd built that might not be glamorous, but was hers. You know what's strange? Victoria said, finishing her second glass of wine. This is actually turning into a decent evening, despite everything. I was thinking the same thing. Christopher's expression grew serious. Victoria, I have a proposition for you. Her stomach tightened. What kind of proposition? The kind that gives us both something we want. He pulled out a business card and a pen, writing something on the back. Those people who set this up, they're expecting a disaster. They're expecting you to run out crying, for me to be annoyed, for this to be a story they can laugh about for months. It was exactly that, Victoria pointed out, but it doesn't have to end that way. Christopher slid the card across the table. What if we dated? Actually dated. Publicly. For real, as far as anyone knows. Victoria stared at him. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Think about it. Rachel and her friends wanted to humiliate you. Instead, you end up dating a billionaire. Their joke backfires spectacularly. That's crazy. But even as she said it, Victoria felt a spark of something. Anger, vindication, maybe a bit of her own cruelty. They'd be furious. Exactly. Christopher's smile was sharp, and it solves another problem for me. I've been dodging setup attempts and unwanted attention from certain social circles for years. Having a girlfriend, a real person with a real life, not someone from their world, would get them off my back. So I'd be your shield, and you'd be my revenge. Victoria turned the card over in her fingers. It had his personal cell phone number on the back. That's a terrible foundation for anything. It's a foundation for a mutually beneficial arrangement. What happens after that? He shrugged. We'll figure it out as we go. Victoria should say no. This was insane. She had Sophie to think about, a life that didn't need this kind of complication. But the image of Rachel's smug face, of those cruel messages, of years of her sister's subtle condescension bubbled up inside her. What would this involve? She asked carefully. Dates. Public ones. Events. I have a charity gala next weekend. You'd be my +1. We'd need to be convincing, but I don't expect anything intimate. This would be professional, with clear boundaries. And Sophie? I'd never ask you to involve your daughter until you were completely comfortable with that, if ever. Christopher's expression softened. I'm not a monster, Victoria. I wouldn't use a child as part of this. Victoria took a long sip of wine, her mind racing. This was crazy. This was stupid. This could blow up in her face in 100 different ways. One condition, she said finally. If at any point this hurts Sophie, if she gets confused or upset, or if I think it's affecting her negatively, we end it immediately. No questions asked. Christopher extended his hand across the table. Deal. Victoria looked at his hand, then at his face, trying to read his intentions. She saw anger there, yes, and a desire for control, but also something else. Respect, maybe. Or at least the willingness to treat her as an equal in this bizarre arrangement. She shook his hand. Deal. But Christopher? Yes. If you're playing me, if this is some extension of their joke, I will find a way to make you regret it. His grip tightened slightly, his blue eyes intense. If I were playing you, Victoria, I wouldn't have shown you those messages. I would have kept you ignorant and complicit. The fact that I'm being honest about my motivations should tell you something. He was right. A truly cruel person would have hidden the truth, would have let her believe this was real from the start. At least Christopher was being upfront about what this was. A transaction, a partnership, maybe even a friendship, but definitely not love. When do we start? She asked. Christopher's smile was wolfish. How about right now? Give me your phone. Confused, Victoria handed it over. He held it up, angling it to capture them both in frame, his arm around her shoulders. Smile, he said, and snapped a photo. Before she could protest, he was typing, posting the picture to her social media with the caption, "Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. First date, your new beginnings." Rachel follows you, doesn't she? He asked, handing back her phone. Victoria's eyes widened as notifications started flooding in. She's going to lose her mind. That's the idea. Christopher stood and offered his hand. Come on, let's go for a walk. Give people something to talk about. As Victoria took his hand and let him lead her out of the coffee shop, she couldn't help but wonder what she'd just agreed to. This wasn't the fairy tale ending she'd imagined when she'd gotten ready for this date, but it was something else entirely. Something dangerous and thrilling and possibly very, very stupid. Behind them, her phone continued to buzz with notifications. Somewhere across town, Rachel was probably staring at that photo in disbelief, and Victoria discovered that revenge, even the petty kind, felt surprisingly good. The next morning, Victoria woke to 73 text messages, 42 missed calls, and a sinking feeling that she'd made a terrible mistake. Most of the messages were from Rachel, progressing from confused, "Is this real?" to angry, "Call me now," to something that almost looked like panic. "Vic, please, we need to talk about this." Victoria ignored them all. Instead, she made Sophie pancakes shaped like dinosaurs and tried to act like her world hadn't tilted sideways in the span of 24 hours. "Mommy, why are you smiling at your phone?" Sophie asked, syrup dripping down her chin. Victoria hadn't realized she was smiling. Christopher had sent a message an hour ago. "Good morning. Coffee at 10? We should discuss strategy. I'll come to you. Send me your address." "Just a friend, sweetheart," Victoria said, wiping Sophie's face. "How would you feel about staying with Mrs. Patterson this morning? Mommy has to meet someone." Sophie's eyes lit up. Mrs. Patterson, their neighbor, had 3 cats and let Sophie watch as many nature documentaries as she wanted. "Can I?" 2 hours later, with Sophie safely deposited next door, Victoria opened her apartment door to find Christopher Dalton standing in the hallway of her modest building, looking completely out of place in his designer jeans and cashmere sweater. He held 2 coffee cups and a bag from an expensive bakery. "You brought provisions," Victoria said, stepping aside to let him in. "I thought it might ease the shock of having a stranger in your home." Christopher's eyes swept the small living room, the worn couch, the walls covered in Sophie's artwork, the pile of library books about dinosaurs on the coffee table. "This is nice. Cozy. You don't have to be polite. I know it's tiny compared to what you're used to." "I meant what I said." He handed her a coffee. "It feels like a home. My penthouse feels like a hotel most days." They sat at her small kitchen table, and Christopher pulled out his phone. "We need to talk about last night, specifically the aftermath. Rachel's been blowing up my phone. Same here. She showed up at my office at 7 this morning." Christopher's expression was grim. She tried to explain it away as a misunderstanding, that the messages were taken out of context. When that didn't work, she threatened to go to the press with a story about how I'm exploiting her vulnerable sister. Victoria's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. "She what?" "Don't worry. I have excellent lawyers and even better documentation. Those messages are time-stamped and saved. If she tries anything, she'll destroy herself." He paused. "I gave her a choice. Resign quietly with a reference letter, or be terminated for workplace harassment and conspiracy. She chose to resign." Victoria should have felt vindicated. Instead, she felt hollow. "She's still my sister. A sister who tried to humiliate you for entertainment. I know, Victoria set down her cup. "Our parents died 4 years ago. Car accident. Rachel and I were all each other had left. We were never super close, but after they died, the distance got worse. She went into corporate, started making money, and I had Sophie. Our lives went in completely different directions. And she resented you for it, maybe. Or maybe she just stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a project. Someone who needed fixing." Victoria traced the rim of her cup. "The sad thing is, if she'd just been honest, if she'd said, 'Hey, I know this successful guy. Want to meet him?' I might have said yes, but she had to turn it into a joke." Christopher was quiet for a moment. "My offer still stands. We can call this off right now if you want. I'll make sure Rachel doesn't cause you any problems, and we can both pretend last night never happened." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him. In the morning light of her kitchen, he seemed different than the commanding presence from the coffee shop, more human, more uncertain. "Do you want to call it off?" she asked. "Honestly, no." Christopher ran a hand through his hair. "Last night was the first interesting evening I've had in months, years maybe. Everyone in my world wants something from me. Money, connections, status. But you were just angry and honest and real. That's a low bar for interesting. You'd be surprised how rare real is in my life." He leaned forward. "Victoria, I'm not going to pretend this is a traditional arrangement, but I meant what I said about boundaries and respect. If we do this, we do it right. You and Sophie's well-being comes first." The mention of her daughter made Victoria's chest tighten. "Speaking of Sophie, she's going to have questions eventually. 7-year-olds aren't stupid. If you start showing up, if we're going to events together, she'll notice. Then we tell her the truth. Age-appropriate version, of course." Christopher pulled a folder from his bag. "I took the liberty of having my assistant research this. Explaining new relationships to children, maintaining stability, red flags to watch for. I want to do this right, Victoria. Not just for the arrangement, but because your daughter deserves better than adults who don't think through consequences." Victoria flipped through the folder, stunned. It was thorough. Articles from child psychologists, books about blended families, even a list of family counselors in the area. You researched parenting advice? I researched being a responsible adult who's entering a child's orbit. Christopher's tone was matter of fact. I won't pretend to know anything about kids, but I can at least educate myself. Something shifted in Victoria's chest. This wasn't just about revenge or convenience for him. He was actually taking this seriously. Okay, she said quietly. We do this. But we need rules. Agreed. Christopher pulled out a notepad. I'll go first. Rule 1. Complete honesty between us. No games, no hidden agendas. If something bothers you, you tell me. Rule 2, Victoria added. Sophie's schedule comes first. I work around her school and activities. If that means missing your events, so be it. Fair. Rule 3. We maintain separate living spaces. This isn't about moving in together or playing house. Rule 4. We set an end date, 3 months. After that, we reevaluate whether to continue or end things amicably. Christopher nodded, writing it down. Rule 5. Public affection is limited to what you're comfortable with. Hand-holding, maybe an arm around your shoulders, nothing that makes you uncomfortable. They continued like this for another hour, hammering out details. Financial boundaries. Christopher would cover costs for events he invited her to, but Victoria maintained her own expenses. Social media guidelines. How to handle press if they got attention. Exit strategies if things went wrong. This is the weirdest relationship negotiation I've ever heard of, Victoria said finally, looking at their list of rules. Probably the healthiest too, Christopher countered. Most relationships stumble because people don't communicate expectations clearly. A knock at the door interrupted them. Victoria checked her phone. Noon already. That's Mrs. Patterson with Sophie. Are you okay meeting her? I can have them wait if... I'd like to meet her, Christopher said, standing. If that's all right with you. Victoria's heart hammered as she opened the door. Sophie bounded in, her curly hair escaping its ponytail, clutching a book about T-Rexes. Mommy, Mrs. Patterson's cat caught a mouse and... Sophie stopped, noticing Christopher. Her eyes went wide. Who are you? Sophie, this is Christopher. Christopher, my daughter Sophie. Victoria held her breath. Christopher crouched down to Sophie's level, a gesture Victoria hadn't expected. Hi, Sophie. I'm a friend of your mom's. That's a cool book. Is that a Tyrannosaurus Rex? Sophie clutched the book tighter, suddenly shy. Yeah. Do you like dinosaurs? I don't know much about them, Christopher admitted, but I'd like to learn. What's your favorite? Velociraptor. They hunted in packs and were really smart. Sophie warmed up slightly. Most people think they're like in the movies, but actually they were smaller and had feathers. Feathers? Really? Christopher's interest seemed genuine. That must have looked interesting. Yeah, like deadly chickens. Sophie giggled at her own joke. Victoria watched this interaction with something tight in her chest. Christopher didn't talk down to Sophie or fake enthusiasm. He just listened, asked questions, treated her like a person worth paying attention to. After a few more minutes of dinosaur discussion, Sophie retreated to her room to organize her toy collection, leaving the adults alone again. She's great, Christopher said simply. She is. Victoria's voice was thick. Thank you for not being weird about this. Why would I be weird? She's a kid who likes dinosaurs. That's pretty straightforward. He checked his watch. I should go. The charity gala is Saturday night. I'll have my stylist send over some dress options for you to choose from. I can pick my own dress. Christopher paused. Victoria, this is a $5,000 a plate event. The dress code is specific. Let me handle this part. Please. It's not about you not being capable. It's about making sure you're comfortable and prepared for what you're walking into. Victoria wanted to argue, but he was right. She had no idea what that world required. Fine, but I get final approval on what I wear. Absolutely. He headed for the door, then turned back. Victoria? For what it's worth, I'm glad Rachel pulled that stunt. If she hadn't, we never would have met. After he left, Victoria stood in her quiet apartment, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Through the wall, she could hear Sophie singing to herself, happy and oblivious to how much her mother's life had just changed. Victoria's phone buzzed, another message from Rachel. "You're making a huge mistake. He's going to hurt you." For the first time, Victoria blocked her sister's number. Whatever happened next, it was her choice. Her mistake to make, her risk to take. And maybe, just maybe, her chance at something real. Saturday arrived faster than Victoria expected. The dress Christopher's stylist sent over was stunning. A deep emerald silk gown that somehow made her feel both elegant and like herself. Sophie watched from her bed as Victoria got ready, eyes wide with wonder. "You look like a princess, Mommy. I feel like I'm playing dress-up," Victoria admitted, adjusting the delicate straps. "But a really good dress-up." Sophie tilted her head. "Is Christopher taking you to the party?" Victoria sat beside her daughter on the bed. "Yes, sweetheart. Christopher and we're going to be spending more time together. How do you feel about that?" Sophie was quiet for a moment, twisting her dinosaur plushie. "Do you like him?" The question was more complicated than a 7-year-old could understand. Did she like Christopher? She respected him, found him interesting, appreciated his directness, but "I'm getting to know him," Victoria said carefully. "He seems like a good person." "Okay." Sophie nodded, satisfied with this answer. "Can he come to my school science fair next month?" "We're doing dinosaur dioramas." Victoria's throat tightened. "Maybe. We'll see." The doorbell rang. Christopher, right on time. When Victoria opened the door, his expression stopped her breath. He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You look..." He cleared his throat. "That dress is perfect. Your stylist has good taste." Victoria grabbed her borrowed clutch, nerves making her hands shake slightly. The gala was everything Victoria imagined and more. Held in a historic museum, the venue dripped with wealth, crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, women in gowns that cost more than Victoria's annual salary. She felt the stares as they entered, Christopher's hand warm on the small of her back. "They're all looking at us," she whispered. "They're looking at you," he corrected. "You're beautiful, Victoria. Own it." The evening blurred. Introductions to people whose names Victoria immediately forgot. Conversations about investments and real estate markets she barely understood. Christopher stayed close, translating the social codes, making sure she was never left alone with strangers. "You're good at this," she told him during a quiet moment. "Playing the attentive boyfriend. Who says I'm playing?" His tone was light, but something in his eyes made her pulse quicken. Then Victoria saw her. Across the ballroom, Rachel stood in a silver gown, accompanied by a man Victoria didn't recognize. Their eyes met, and Rachel's expression twisted. Shock, anger, something that might have been hurt. "She's here." Victoria breathed. Christopher followed her gaze. "I didn't know. This event, it's open to anyone who can afford the ticket. I'm sorry." "Don't be." Victoria straightened her spine. "I'm not hiding from her." Rachel was making her way over, determination in every step. Victoria's heart hammered, but she held her ground. "Victoria." Rachel's voice was tight, controlled. "Can we talk? Privately?" "Anything you need to say, you can say here," Victoria replied, surprising herself with her steadiness. Rachel's eyes flicked to Christopher, then back. "You're making a fool of yourself. You think this is real? He's using you to make some kind of point." "And you weren't using me?" Victoria's voice stayed calm, but fire burned underneath. "You set me up as entertainment for your co-workers. You wanted to humiliate me so I'd come crawling to you for help." "I wanted you to wake up." Rachel's composure cracked. "You're wasting your life at that diner, raising Sophie in that tiny apartment. I was trying to show you that you deserve better, that you need to accept help. By making me the punchline of a joke?" Victoria shook her head. "That's not help, Rachel. That's cruelty dressed up as concern." "And this?" Rachel gestured between Victoria and Christopher. "This is real? He's a billionaire, Vic. You're a single mom who serves pancakes for a living. What future do you think this has?" The words hit their mark. Every insecurity Victoria had been pushing down. But before she could respond, Christopher stepped forward. "You know what I see when I look at your sister?" His voice was quiet, but cut through the space between them. "I see someone who works 2 jobs to provide for her daughter, someone who turned down financial help because she wanted to make it on her own terms, someone with integrity, kindness, and strength. He paused. What do I see when I look at you? Someone who values status over character, who measures worth in dollar signs. Your sister is worth 10 of you, Rachel. And the only person who can't see that is you. Rachel's face flushed red. For a moment, Victoria thought she might lash out. Instead, her sister's expression crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears gathering. God, Vic, I'm so sorry. You're right. Everything you said, you're right. I was jealous. You have Sophie. You have this purpose and contentment, and I have... What? A job I just lost? A luxury apartment that's empty? She wiped at her eyes. I've been so angry at you for being happy with less, and I didn't realize until now how messed up that is. Victoria stood frozen, not expecting this. Rachel, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. Rachel's voice broke. But you're my sister, my only family, and I've been a terrible one. The ballroom seemed to fade away. Victoria saw her sister, really saw her, for the first time in years. Not the polished, successful executive, but a lonely woman who'd lost her way. I don't forgive you, Victoria said quietly. Not yet. What you did hurt too much, but... She took a breath. Maybe someday, if you're willing to actually work on being a better person, a better sister. Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll do whatever it takes. I promise. As Rachel walked away, Victoria felt Christopher's hand find hers. You okay? He asked. I think so. She squeezed his fingers. Thank you for what you said. I meant every word. They stayed at the gala another hour, but something had shifted. Christopher was more attentive, his touches lingering longer. When they danced, he held her closer than necessary, and Victoria found herself leaning into it, forgetting that this was supposed to be an arrangement. Can I confess something? Christopher asked as they swayed to the music. What? This stopped being fake for me about a week ago. His blue eyes searched hers. I know that wasn't the plan. I know we have rules and boundaries and an exit date. But Victoria, when I'm with you and Sophie, I feel more like myself than I have in years. Victoria's heart raced. Christopher, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. He smiled ruefully. In case you couldn't tell from the way I can't stop looking at you, she should pull back. Remind him of their agreement. Protect her heart and Sophie's. But standing there in his arms, Victoria realized she'd been lying to herself. This hadn't been fake for her either. Somewhere between coffee shop confrontations and dinosaur discussions and quiet moments in her kitchen, she'd fallen for this complicated, generous, surprisingly gentle man. Take us home? She whispered. The drive back was quiet, charged with unspoken possibilities. When they reached her building, Christopher walked her to her door. I know we said 3 months, Victoria said, turning to face him. But what if we didn't put a timer on this? What if we just saw where it went? Christopher's expression was tender. What about Sophie? Sophie asked if you could come to her science fair. I think she's already decided she likes you. Victoria reached for his hand. This is terrifying. You're terrifying. But maybe the best things are. I'm terrifying. Christopher laughed softly. You could break my heart. Break Sophie's heart. That's terrifying. I could say the same about you. He cupped her face gently. You've already changed my life, Victoria. The question is whether you'll let me be part of yours. Really part of it. Not an arrangement or a transaction, but something real. Victoria thought about the journey that had brought them here. The cruel joke that became an unexpected connection. The revenge plot that transformed into genuine care. The fake relationship that turned real. I'm a package deal, she warned. Me and Sophie. Late nights when she's sick, school events, dinosaur documentaries on repeat. I wouldn't want it any other way. And I still work at the diner. I'm not giving up my independence. I wouldn't ask you to. Christopher's thumb traced her cheek. I'm not trying to rescue you, Victoria. I'm trying to build something with you. There's a difference. She searched his face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Found only certainty. Okay, she whispered. Let's try this. The real version. Christopher kissed her then, gentle, asking permission even as he claimed it. Victoria melted into him, tasting champagne and promise, and the terrifying thrill of taking a leap. When they broke apart, both breathless, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. Fair warning, I'm going to be terrible at this. I'll probably work too much and forget important dates, and not understand half of what Sophie tells me about dinosaurs. And I'll probably be stubborn and independent to a fault, and freak out when things get too good because I'm waiting for them to fall apart. Sounds like we're perfectly imperfect for each other. Victoria laughed, surprising herself. Yeah, I guess we are. 3 months later, Victoria stood in Christopher's penthouse kitchen. Their kitchen now, technically, though she still kept her apartment as backup, watching Sophie explain velociraptor hunting strategies to a bemused Christopher. He listened with complete attention, asking questions, letting Sophie climb onto his lap to show him diagrams in her book. Rachel had started therapy and reached out once a week, slowly rebuilding trust. It would take time, maybe years, but Victoria found she wanted to try. Life was too short to hold on to anger, and everyone deserved a chance at redemption. Mommy, Christopher said he'd take us to the Natural History Museum tomorrow. Sophie bounced with excitement. Did he? Victoria caught Christopher's eye over their daughter's head. He mouthed, sorry, with a sheepish grin. If that's okay with your mom, Christopher amended. It's okay, Victoria said, her heart full, more than okay. Later, after Sophie was asleep in her new room, decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars and dinosaur posters, Victoria and Christopher stood on the balcony, overlooking the city lights. Do you ever think about how we started? Victoria asked, leaning into his warmth. Every day. Christopher wrapped his arms around her from behind. Best terrible joke anyone ever played on me. We should send Rachel a thank you card. Don't push it. But he was smiling. They both were. Victoria turned in his arms, looking up at this man who'd started as an arrangement and become so much more. I love you, she said, the words finally easy. Just in case you couldn't tell, I love you too, Christopher replied, kissing her forehead, her nose, her lips. You and Sophie both, my perfect, chaotic, dinosaur-obsessed family. The word settled over Victoria like a warm blanket. This strange, unexpected, thoroughly unconventional family they'd built from the wreckage of a cruel prank. Sometimes the best things in life came from the worst beginnings. Sometimes people who seemed wrong on paper were exactly right in reality. And sometimes, Victoria thought as Christopher held her close under the stars, love found you in the most unexpected ways, dressed in revenge and arrangement, but revealing itself as something real, lasting, and entirely worth the risk. The joke had been on them after all. But the punchline? That was a happy ending no one saw coming.